Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And welcome to the program, today being April 4th and the 50th anniversary of an appalling day in American history, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a day that some of us older folks remember very well. But we have a guest with us today, and there is so much to talk about and to pick his brain about because we haven't heard from him in a long time, too long a time. And so let's just jump right on it. Here is Jared Day from Daily News Nuggets back again. Hi, Jared.
Hey, Lynn.
Hi. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I am excellent. How about yourself?
I'm great. I'm really good. So it's been a long time, and an awful lot has happened.
Yeah, well, yeah. It certainly isn't the way I would have had it go, but it certainly you can certainly claim that you live in interesting times.
Exactly. So, where to start? I mean, I guess at this point, let's just get your sense of where the Trump presidency stands right now. Is it on solid ground? Is it getting scarier? Is it you think it's going to last 4 years? Give us an overview.
Well, I would have to say that the way I look at it now is that it's in short. It's like I think of it in 3-month segments.
Okay.
You know and right now I think he's actually having, for him, this last 2 or 3 weeks has actually not been too bad. By any other historical standard, it would have been just terrible.
Right.
One of the great fears when people, I think, when we started looking at the Trump administration was that it would normalize certain types of things. And I think that we are so seeing that when people will look at, his numbers are getting better. Or when you hear them say, it's like, well, this week, he's actually had a good week this week. It's like, if this is what a good week for a president looks like, or these are good polling numbers for any president, then you know that the scales have changed.
Well, he has. He's recalibrated every scale on which we function, it seems, and all of them, of course, in the wrong direction.
Having said that,
okay,
that I think that the biggest concern that I have right now is all of his replacements on the cabinet level. That is somehow. It lives for him that, according to the reports anyway, that he now feels that he's enough. He's been in the saddle long enough that he can now kind of let his own instincts have free rein.
Right.
And that especially in the foreign policy, in so many ways, it's just like, wow, that's really interesting that he should think that.
Interesting.
You would have thought by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would have thought. I mean, it almost indicates to me that somehow this is somebody who has some kind of odd form of learning disability, where he can't learn.
Oh God.
So he keeps making the same mistakes over and over, and rather than actually learn what there is to learn from those mistakes, he simply blames people.
Yeah.
But then, I think that there's layers upon layers of psychological problems that Trump has that we've never seen in a president before. And so multidimensional and so many openly. It's so open. Often presidents in the past have had obsessions, personality disorders. I think in order to even want to be president, you have to have a certain kind of a personality disorder. But we've never seen anything quite like this before.
No.
But that is my chief concern. But on the other hand, I would say that I also hear, and I think this is probably a correct have, is that there's a lot of not paranoia, but a deep concern. The sense of high level, like 4-alarm fire stress in the White House, it's almost palpable. And I would say if I were in the White House, I would feel that way, or at least I feel like I should feel that way. The days where he thinks that things are really going great, it sort of indicates that he's really not in touch with just how many different brush fires are going around the White House right now.
Okay, so there's two words that begin with I.
Yes.
That begin with I, and I'm just wondering are either of them really in play in the next year or two, and that is indictment or impeachment.
I would say, well, I think that with the Mueller investigation, it's my understanding that the best that he can do in a final report is to recommend indictment.
Right.
For somebody like Donald Trump. Everybody else, he can indict.
Correct.
But Donald Trump he can recommend indictment, in which case it would all get kicked to the House of Representatives. And my sense that there's going to be lots of indictments. And in the Watergate years, they came up with, I think, close to 50 indictments when it was all over, 50 prosecutions that came out of the Watergate scandal.
Wow.
I fully expect we're going to go past that.
Really?
Yes, because when you start, there's so many different layers. You look at, it isn't just the Russia probe. There's probably about 20 people involved in that particular universe of stuff. But then you look at the obstruction of justice, the perjury that has, I think, gone on. But then you start drifting over into the money laundering and the corrupt practices of Trump and his businesses and other things. Then you start. Then I think that the numbers are going to really start to pile up.
Well, how does a presidency?
So that's what I would say about.
Okay, indictment, but how does a presidency survive that? Nixon's didn't.
Correct, but here's. In my view, right now we're actually in a constitutional crisis right now. In that we have the basic. You'll hear people in the media say, "Well, our institutions are holding up seemingly just fine right now."
No,
and I do not share that opinion.
No, because it just seems to me that the legislative branch is missing in action. So, no, the checks and balances that are supposed to operate are not operating.
Correct. And so we're like in that. It is my hope is that the correction will come in November.
Right.
We'll see.
Well, I
am optimistic about this.
Can I add another piece of optimism?
Sure.
Another piece of optimism happening in my home state of Wisconsin yesterday. There was a Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and for the first time since, I think, 1995, a Democrat won. It's been a long time. And this is a liberal Democratic woman beating out a crew-cut, NRA-supported guy and beat him soundly. I know that the Governor Walker is apoplectic, and he even tweeted something like, "Wake up, GOP, there's a blue wave coming."
Yep.
This is good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of evidence for that,
right.
For the blue wave theory, and I agree with it, and with some caveats. Well, let me see. I have two perspectives on that, actually. In that on the one hand, I think that the Democrats have a historic opportunity here to make unprecedented gains, the kind of gains that they have not made in the House of Representatives since the New Deal.
Right.
And right now, if you look at the polling numbers, the most conservative estimate says that they should net somewhere between 30 and 40 seats. When I believe what the number they need is either 24 or 26. I can't remember right now which number that is, but they need 20. Let's just say 26 to get the majority in the House. And right now projections are 30 to 40. Now, if you average the what's the term? The difference in victory of the candidates, special election candidates who've run since Trump came in.
Right.
There's been lots of Democratic victories, but especially at the end of last year, into this year, what you're looking at is swings in the polling of somewhere between 15 and 20%. And when you're seeing numbers like that, I saw an analysis last week that said that if that is consistent in the House of Representatives, they would actually put in danger about 110 seats for the Republicans.
Oh my God!
Now, I do not. There's no way that I can imagine the Democrats taking anything like 110 seats, but I think that they're probably going to come in more like 60 to 70.
Yeah, but Jared, that's only they'll only come in like that if Democrats don't stay home like they tend to do and maintain this level of engagement. And what worries me is when people say what you're saying, they stay home. Why do I have to go? All these Republicans are going to get beat.
I actually think that we're looking at a rare phenomenon here where I think that dynamic is working against Republicans right now, not against Democrats.
How?
That what you're seeing is, and this Scott Walker, is part of his conversation this morning was that it's like, yes, they need to wake up, but it was like that there's a degree of complacency out there amongst Republican lawmakers. That this is something that they've had. Many of them have never had challengers. Many of them think that, well, I won by 30 points last time. I've got nothing to worry about this time. One of the things about House races that is somewhat different than a lot of Senate or presidential races is that it's very hard to get accurate polling. It's very expensive, and so most House members, if they think they're safe, they don't do the work until like September.
Yeah.
That they'll actually do an actual poll. So that's why these preliminary races are so important in actually giving some hint. But more to your point, that you see that concern at the RNC, the Republican National Committee, saying, like, you Republican lawmakers, you need to get out there. You're not doing enough. You're You're not. The messages that you've got out there are really bad messages. They're not working. There's little evidence that they're working. Moreover, that when you talk, if you look at kind of the enthusiasm gap, they poll for that sort of thing, of course.
Oh, yeah.
That the enthusiasm gap is way more on the Democratic side.
Right.
And it's also, there's another dynamic in play here. And for me, the biggest concern I have for the fall is young people turning out.
Well, they are, but wait. They're going to, because one of the wonderful things that has happened in the wake of the horror at the high school in Florida is that you've seen millennials and young people activated and becoming aware of their political clout.
Well, I actually think what they've become aware of is what they have at stake. This has been seriously missing through all the Bush years and then the Obama years, especially the Obama years. I think that there was a lot was taken for granted.
Right.
And also there's a degree of jadedness and kind of a ickiness that a lot of young people felt towards the political parties especially, but politics in general.
Right.
And so what you saw is that in the last election that a lot of them stayed away. But what I think a lot of millennials have correctly seen is that they have way more at stake, not just in terms of gun control, but in terms of just everything that they care about, whether it's LGBT issues or immigration,
climate,
or education,
climate
change, it's the whole issue set, and this is true even amongst evangelical young people. That the sense of disillusionment among evangelical young people is noticeable. The disillusionment amongst young people from gun families is palpable.
Really?
Is measurable. Yes. That gun ownership amongst young people is declining precipitously. So these are all great indicators as far as I can see, but I still have the concern that the habit of showing up remains to be tested.
Okay, here's another concern. Wait, here's another concern though. We're talking about our election. And there was a piece in the local paper yesterday about how all the machines that I vote on leave no paper trail. They're all hackable. The Russians, as we know, had large success last time. What is to say that we have a secure infrastructure for casting our votes and having them count?
Well, we don't.
Oh.
That's the answer to that one. I mean, and the thing is, can it be effectively exploited such that it will alter the races? That remains to be seen, and I have a real concern about it, because one of the things that is so galling about the Republicans' behavior since 2016 is that they are just they're not doing a damn thing about protecting our elections from outside actors like Putin. People don't realize how little money Putin actually put into the whole hacking and kind of collusion in the election. We're talking maybe $10 million.
Nothing.
That he put into that.
Yeah.
And you can bet it's gonna be
more
exponentially higher sums that he's going to throw at this election. Never mind other actors out there who might want to meddle for different agendas. I don't have any words of solace around that.
No,
this is going to be attempt.
You mentioned other actors, and the visual I got in my head was, the infamous guy that Trump conjured up, some 400-pound guy sitting on his bed in the Ukraine somewhere, right? I mean, that is how vulnerable we are, right?
We might be, although those aren't the actors that, you see, in order to actually swing elections, it's a kind of thing that it's my understanding, I've done a little investigation of this, that it actually requires a much more substantial investment than that. Okay. That you in order to you have to have some sort of cyber capability, the kind of cyber capability that states have, companies have, a guy in his basement usually don't have. But here again, we'll find out. It is going to be a tough election in kind of looking for that.
Jared, I wanna pick your historian's brain now. It seems pretty clear that we elected. This is a country that elected a black man with an odd name, Barack Obama, twice, and we felt pretty damn good about ourselves. And we then elected, amazingly, this bloated white buffoon. And so here's the thing. Barack Obama, this dignified man, begot Donald Trump in that was the reaction from a sizable part of the population. It seems to me that Donald Trump, let us hope, is begetting the same kind of backlash. You see women empowered, young people empowered, ACLU tripling its membership nationwide, that we'll see. Is this the way American history goes? We get buffeted by, one way, then we go the other. It would seem that if we keep doing that, we end up in one place. We never move.
Well, I would say Trump, in a lot of ways, is an anomalous historical figure.
Thank God.
That we really don't have. Well, we will see. It all depends on what he leaves in his wake when he's gone. Here is somebody who has really taken the Republican Party away towards a direction that we've really never seen, toward a kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Sullivan's term Christianist. Are you familiar with that term?
No, I haven't heard the term, but
Christianist?
Okay.
It's a synthesis of evangelicalism and a kind of hyper-nationalism, hyper-patriotism that we see in Trump, with his kind of emphasis on cultural issues and white nationalism.
Well, wait. The last time I saw that wasn't called Christianist. That was called fascist.
Well, I don't know that evangelical. I wouldn't lump evangelicalism in with fascists.
Well, where they're going politically. It sure looks, smells fascistic to me.
Yes, I would agree with that. Historically, that link is somewhat underdeveloped. But I think in terms of modern fascism, like 21st century fascism, this is often a direction that conservative religious people find themselves going in, desperately seeking some strong man to dial things back, to invent some mythic past. This is one of the common features I see of fascism of the 30s versus fascism of today is this kind of an effort to reinvent or recreate some past that, in a lot of ways, never existed in the first place.
Right.
But you kind of living inside of people's very underdeveloped notions of what happened in the past. And Trump is he's a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
He's somebody. It's like it's still 1980 as far as he's concerned. This is somebody whose politics has not shifted since the 80s. He talks about immigration and what is it, industry, the decline, countries like Japan and others sort of taking our industry and all this. It's like that's the stable decades ago, and yet he's still, working off that same rhetoric, among other things.
Well, look, the world is changing at warp speed. Technology is driving that in large part. Geopolitics and everything is changing, and so all over the world you see this destabilizing, this wish for somebody to make it stop. For it just seems to me that I don't see this. This going away, this destabilizing influence that we're getting because of the speed of change now.
I would say to an extent that is true. Paul Krugman has an awesome column this morning. I'm going to be posting it on my blog later this week, where he talks about this kind of a phenomenon in the United States. And I agree with, and he would agree, that in the short and medium term, the conservative or red parts of America are probably going to get even more red and even more reactionary over the next, say, 10 years. And one of the things that's driving this is that the economy is transforming in such ways that educated people, highly educated people, that is really the gold standard in the new economy, right. And that companies that rely on highly educated workers, they want to be in communities filled with highly educated people. They want to be in communities with other companies that attract highly educated people. And the effect that this has out in red state America is that the next generation of young people that comes along, and you'll see this in small town, rural America, everywhere, is that the young people grow up and the smart ones leave.
Right.
And that leaves behind the kind of less smart ones, the less educated ones, and older voters who kind of pine for the days of Dwight Eisenhower. It's just like there's kind of a cycle here where it's going to turn blue state America bluer and red state America redder in the short term. That's what Krugman makes the case for today, and I think he's spot on.
Okay, so
I see it all.
Let me get back though then to the election and this ridiculous thing that we'll never get out of our Constitution, the Electoral College. It seems to me that because blue states, blue people congregate in urban areas, and that leaves this huge, that's why the maps of America, you say, it looks like all red, except for these little blue dots where cities are. But with the Electoral College and the way we apportion that means that exactly what we've got in the last, 3 elections, the person who wins the most votes doesn't win the White House.
Yep. Yeah. That is. I don't foresee us doing anything about that unless there is a big revolution at the polls that comes at the end of this year or in 2020. It's possible, but I don't. To me, the more insidious thing that needs to be dealt with is the gerrymandering piece.
Yeah.
And that one, this if the Democrats can do well in 2018 and in 2020, that will handle that. That they will be in the position, and this is sort of the lone, I would say, the only benefit to keeping Trump in office until 2020 is that he's the gift that is going to keep on giving.
Right, in that
all
regard.
the way until the end of his first term.
But that's if we survive it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can survive that
exactly
long.
Right. I'm not an advocate.
Jeez.
The impeachment, you had mentioned that. We didn't get to talk about the impeachment piece.
So the impeachment piece doesn't come into play until the election in November, when we can take the House. The Democrats can take the House. So you see it happening?
If they, I would think that it would have to, both for principled reasons. It's the kind of thing that I would look for the Democrats to dramatically reassert their legislative role, the kind of the checks and balances, and they're going to do it. I would suspect through reconstituting Nunez's committee, such that they're going to go forward with their own much more vigorous investigation, much more public investigations, ones where the subpoena power is used pretty often, and then that once Mueller submits a report and they pull in their own findings, that they will proceed simply as a reassertion of Congress as a check and balance on the presidency, because we're going to know way more next January and February than we do now about the depth of Trump's problems. And I don't see that. I don't see any of this stuff getting, being illusion. A lot of people, you'll hear a lot of pundits on the right say that Mueller has not found any evidence of collusion. And I personally, I think that those people are whistling past the graveyard. I think that there's so much evidence of collusion that it's kind of sort of an abundance in plain sight. I think one of the things that they're sort of grappling with is the idea that, well, circumstantial evidence is somehow not evidence, when in fact circumstantial evidence is actually what convicts millions of people every year.
Yes, exactly,
crime.
Exactly.
And the circumstantial evidence against Trump is overwhelming.
Right.
When you talk about the meetings, I often laugh about the kind of the contortions that you see people on the right go through. They'll say it's like, well, there's no evidence. Well, it's like, well, why was there all these campaign people having this high-up meeting at Trump Tower, with Russian intelligence people? I mean, the original excuse was that, well, they were talking about Russian adoption policy. I mean, that was such a cynical kind of FU kind of response.
Yeah.
And then since then, one of the things that is that now the Trump people no longer even defend. They don't even explain why those meetings were occurring. And then you start asking, well, what about the other contacts? No explanation. Why were people lying about all of that? No explanation. And then you start having these the people like Jeff Sessions being involved. It seems like a widening circle of people who either lied or haven't. We just don't even. They're not even telling us the reasons for all this. What are the reasons for all these contacts? If this were, and here I'm saying just something that is so patently obvious. If this had been Hillary Clinton getting elected, doing this stuff, the Republican Congress, they'd already be drafting articles of impeachment already.
Of course. Well, I mean,
So,
they would have been drafting
now,
him 3, 4, 5 months ago. Absolutely.
indeed. Well, they were actually talking about impeaching her over the silly email server thing back in the election.
Right.
So, it's like now it's like, okay. But I would say that the Democrats have to. They cannot afford to not do it, both for especially for institutional reasons, constitutional reasons, and political reasons as well.
Does Trump fire Mueller before the election? Or does Trump pardon Manafort?
Yes.
Yes? Yes.
Yes.
Wait. You're saying yes.
Try.
You're saying yes to
Yes.
both. He pardons Manafort and he fires Mueller. Oh,
I think so. And now, having said that, I mean, if Mueller, the investigation is going to continue to go on. And there was just a new guy appointed yesterday or the day before at the Justice Department,
right,
who's kind of overseeing this part. And he looks like somebody. He doesn't look like a Trump toady. He looks like somebody who's part of the FBI and an institutionalist. So, I don't know. We'll see. But I think that especially if Trump is going in the direction of trusting his own judgment and reacting in the way that he simply wants to react. He wanted to fire Mueller a long time ago.
True.
So I think that's what's. Now, what was the other piece that you were asking
Well,
about?
Manafort, does he pardon Manafort? Because if Manafort flips, he's dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that. Yeah.
Wow.
I wouldn't. And it's one of those things. He's going to test the water, and he's already tested his pardon power with that Sheriff Arpaio guy.
Right.
And nothing happened. But with Manafort, I'd look for him to test it. It's like, okay, what's going to happen?
Okay.
Because he knows the Republicans in Congress aren't going to do anything.
Okay, well, that was my next question. Because surely, I was hopefully going to say, surely, if he pardons Manafort and or fires Mueller, some of these spineless Republicans will finally, oh, God, stand up.
You think? I would say I would say in the House of Representatives that you might get 10 or 12 that will say something. And the same, you might get 5 or 6 in the Senate that'll say something. But it is my sense of it that they've basically, what's the old phrase about in for a penny, in for a pound? They've simply thrown themselves in with Trump. It's almost like hoping for a miracle that somehow this will save them.
They really don't know what to do they? They don't know whether to. I think their calculations are just flat out wrong. Like I think there's a really good chance that Paul Ryan is going to lose his election in a totally
I would not be surprised
Republican district
if he chooses not to run.
Oh, you think he'll
if
not
it looks
run?
like it's going to go that way, I would look for him to just decide not to run. I think he's sick of being Speaker of the House. I think he never wanted it. He hasn't been very good at it, and it's ruined. It's ruined his political career.
True.
He had wanted to run for president. There's no way he's ever going to be president. And to have to deal with the Trump segment of the Republican Party, I think it drives him crazy. And
it occurs to me.
I really couldn't.
Okay, yeah, but here, it occurs to me that everybody that embraces Donald Trump ends up eventually going down. I mean, does anyone in 2-3 years, will anybody who enabled Trump, who stood with him, will any of them have a career if they're not in jail?
Yes. Well, it's an interesting question because when you look at the Republicans, whether they're moderates, whether they're non-religious or they're evangelical, it's like when the dust clears on all of this, and we don't even need to get into worst case scenarios. That even if we get to some medium case scenario with Trump, where are these people going to? What are they going to say about their behavior during this time period?
Well, you see, you're the wait. You're the historian, Jared. You're the historian, and that's what I can't believe, that these people aren't thinking about the books that are going to be written and how they will go down in history.
Right. Well, I can already tell you it is one of the worst effects of the kind of alternate news universe that most conservatives live in. That one of the impacts of that is that the starting point for them is that the liberal media and kind of academics and this large scale misinformation conspiracy out there, such that they see history as being on their side, and that will be the first chapter of any history written of this era, was the dominance of a misleading liberal media that lied and distorted the truth, and that what really was going on was what they see on their own TV screens and on their own radio programs.
Oh my God! You really? I mean, they
Yes. Absolutely, I have been stunned, at the people, the Republicans, who are deeply. You'll hear them say, repeat deep state rhetoric, repeating anti-Semitic stuff that they it's almost like they don't even get that it's anti-Semitic what they just said. You get things, kind of characterizations of immigrants and of straight out of the worst elements of the right-wing media.
Right.
I've seen this when Anton Scalia was around. He was a major purveyor of that stuff. Whenever he'd go out on public speaking junkets, what's the other one? Clarence Thomas, the justice, same thing. He and his wife has said all kinds of nutty things.
Right.
And those are justices on the. These are really educated people. These are people who are politically. These are not political novices. Okay, and you see the same thing throughout most of the Republican caucus in the House. And one of the interesting things that's kind of increasing this tendency is that right now a lot of Republicans are afraid to hold town hall meetings.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder
why.
They don't. Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, it's like they're afraid. In their world, it's a conspiracy to humiliate them by a small coterie of left-wing voters and their enablers in the national media. That those are the ones driving that. They don't get it that it actually reflects the values of their voters.
Well, here's what's scary.
So I can even see how it is that these people.
This is frightening.
Yeah.
This is frightening because I think way earlier in our conversation, you said something about, it remains to be seen what's after Trump, what we have. And what we're going to have is this riven nation in which maybe as many as 40% of the population subscribes to this alternative unreality. They're not going away. It's not quite that bad. Okay, so we have a third of the country. We have a third of the country. And
demographically, they are going away.
They're going away?
That's the upside. Demographically, they are going away. When you look at the political attitudes and the values of young people, and you look at the political values of the GOP base right now, it's like those folks are very senior. The GOP base. And it is the case that those folks will die off. And here's the other thing about it. You want to think historically here that we have been a riven nation before along these kinds of lines. And here I'm talking about the entire lifetime of people's lifetime after the Civil War. Our country was just as riven, along similar types of cultural and ideological reasons, and it was an era, the Gilded Age was an era marked by legislative gridlock. Virtually nothing happened for that entire era that was meaningful legislatively because of the gridlock between the kind of former Confederate folks and the rest of the nation. So we've been here before, but it has its distinct features right now. But I would just say now the other piece that is going to another historical trend also. America has routinely flirted with hot populism.
Yep.
And we did this during the 1840s with the Know Nothing.
Yep.
We did it in the 1890s with the Populist Party. We did it right after World War I. There was a a Red Scare that happened, and then of course the McCarthy period. And so it's like we go through, and one of the key kind of features of all of those instances in the past is that, boy, they blaze white and hot for a certain amount of time, but then invariably these people get disillusioned and fall back into previous patterns of voting.
But if I may,
yes.
This is different in that technology, in that social media that can keep people connected and again have this. I just think that just like Trump, blew up every kind of, perceived wisdom about how things work and go.
Yep.
I think we're heading into a time when, I don't think this will these guys aren't going away. They have too many tools now to keep them very active.
The technology tools are certainly formidable, but they're not insurmountable. And I would there was another thing I was going to say about this issue with the other thing here is Trump. Who are these Trump voters going to support after Trump is gone? I honestly don't see any. There is nobody out there in the Republican Party that could take his place. Where are they going to go?
Well,
that to me. I think that they're going to fall back into previous patterns of voting.
Well, they'll vote for Republicans.
Some of those folks voted for Obama. Some of them will choose. And it also depends on to what extent does Trump. How much is he actually going to do for the Republican Party? How much is he actually going to do for Republican lawmakers running for re-election either in 2018 or 2020? I honestly don't think that he's going to do squat.
Well, if you look at some of the special elections, he doesn't know. He hasn't helped.
No.
He hasn't helped. Even when he's tried to help, he hasn't helped.
No.
Right.
No, and so it's like when for what is the future for Republican leadership after this? Is it going to be somebody like a Paul Ryan, or I don't see it. I think that Trump the populist white nationalists of the Republican Party, they actually don't like their GOP leadership.
Right.
They have it in for those people big time.
Right.
And so it's like, once he's gone, where are they going to go?
Okay, well then let's turn to the Democratic Party leadership, because I think the Democratic Party is riven as well. And when the Democrats, let's hope, take the House in November, who's going to be the Speaker?
Nancy.
Yeah, I think so too. Because she knows how to. She knows how to do it.
Realize she knows how to do it, and plus, when she was the Speaker, they accomplished something.
Right.
And that's not something that you can make up on the fly. Right. And are there other people that might be Speaker? Sure, but here's the thing: that if they win substantially in November, it's in part both because people didn't get hooked by Nancy Pelosi being the possible Speaker, and because of her own engagement with them taking back the House in the first place. But it's not like she's sitting in her office letting somebody else pull the levers, or in terms of the Democratic National Committee and support for members of the House running for re-election. It's like she is deeply engaged in that herself.
But look at the leadership. Look at the leadership of the Democratic Party. Pelosi, Hoyer, Clyburn. They're all over 75 years old. And you look around. Okay, so who? It seems like there's a great opportunity in 2020 for the Democrats to take the White House, except they don't have a candidate.
Yep. Well, I disagree. I think they have an abundance of candidates, and none of them. Let's be clear, Lynn. You and I, we've been spoiled. Okay.
Yeah. How? Why?
Barack Obama only comes around once in a while.
All right.
Even somebody like Bill Clinton, as flawed a figure as he was, only come around once in a while. And so now what we're facing is, in my view, this is a historical pattern that goes back for generations. This is what Democrats do, is that they have a big field of candidates when there's no incumbent, and there's going to be an enormous food fight over who's going to get the nomination. And I'd actually looked at, there's going to be more people who throw their hats in. Right now, none of those candidates are like any sort of, they're not Barack Obama. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe there'll be some surprises, and I think it'll sort itself out. I don't see any of these people. Well, I'm sure there's one or two, but I don't see any of them as being absolute clinkers. It's like it was predictable when George McGovern got the nomination that ticket was in serious trouble. And so, when Adlai Stevenson got the nomination in 1956.
Okay, 56.
That was trouble.
Yeah,
that was trouble. And so, it's like, we'll see.
Okay.
I would say that the Republicans are in far deeper trouble. I wouldn't trade places with the Republicans for anything in the world right now.
Okay. We have a question from Chuck. He says, his question is, will we ever see a return to the Republican Party of Reagan or even George Bush? And he says, I think someone like Kasich could maybe lead such an effort if enough conservatives are as disgusted with their party. As is, he thinks Paul Ryan is disgusted. Yeah.
Possible. That would be so great. In my view, that would be so great if we could actually have a second party that had some sanity to it.
Yeah, but but the Trump base doesn't like any of they would never get behind or get excited by Kasich or Bush-like or even Reagan-like. I mean, Trump and the GOP have repudiated much of what Reagan stood for.
I know. Well, they've repudiated they repudiated the first Bush, they've repudiated the second Bush, and you can take it to the bank right now. When the dust clears on Donald Trump, they're going to repudiate Donald Trump.
Well,
and then so it's like, what are they going to be left with, as a model for what their party is about?
Reagan.
Maybe. I guess, but there again, it's like, are there what Reagan Republicans are Trump voters going to rally to those people?
No,
I don't know.
No.
I'm skeptical.
No, I would be
Here
skeptical.
Again, I think that Trump is a unique figure right now, and that when he is off the stage, it is difficult to see what's going to be left of the Republican Party as because right now they're jettisoning so many of their core principles.
All of them.
And doing it with such extravagance. It is so obvious. It's like, what in the future are they going to campaign on? Any of these lawmakers that are around right now, what are they going to campaign on?
I can't imagine.
Family values, they voted for Trump. Low deficits, they voted for Trump. It's like they're going to have so much to answer for.
Being tough on Russia?
Later on.
It's just...
I know. Being tough on national defense generally.
Yeah. It really is amazing. Okay, wow. So I guess these are, as you said, interesting times, but that's a Chinese curse. It just seems the destruction.
I think we're on the cusp of a major change. That will all be for the better if you are somebody who's moderate or liberal. That especially liberal. That if you're on that side of the spectrum, I'd say that there's a good opportunity for us to make unprecedented gains in the next 3 years, and that's what we need to work towards.
Yeah, but never put it past the Democrats to screw things up.
But take heart from that. Take heart from it. And that the Democrats are simply being, for the most part, the same party they've always been. For good, for bad, they're functioning like a normal political party.
Yeah.
And that's what we would like for the Republican Party, is that they actually function like a normal party.
Is it conceivable? Is it conceivable the Republican Party actually ceases to exist?
Yes, that has happened several times. Like after the War of 1812, the Federalist Party had made a series of disastrous political decisions in its opposition to the War of 1812, such that when that war was over, they came off as such a treasonous party, as a party that their national base simply collapsed. The same thing happened in the 1850s when you had the Whig Party in the early 1850s fell apart when its leadership was disconnected from the abolitionist movement. They had an abolitionist base that desperately wanted that issue to be at the core of what their party was about, whereas the leadership, like people like Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, wanted nothing to do with the issue, and it shattered the party. And then again in the late 1850s with the Democratic Party splitting between its northern and southern pieces in the Convention of 1860. So this has happened before. The last time it happened was in 1932 when the Republican Party, it still got called the Republican Party, but it's got decimated by FDR over in 1932, 34, and 36. People don't remember that after the 36 election, there were only 17 Republican senators in the Senate. Think about that.
Yeah. Such stuff happens.
17.
Okay.
So these things do happen, but it requires a real reason. You know, we had slavery and the Civil War coming in the 1850s. In the 30s, we had the Great Depression. Maybe Trump is what's going to do it in 2018.
Yeah, but it might take, like he goes to, he drops a nuclear bomb on North Korea, something like that. But yeah, God help us. Let us hope he is the most destructive force in my lifetime that I have seen arise in politically, without a doubt. And
we don't want him destructive in the nuclear military.
No, and he endangers the world. The world is very, very nervous. And I just again want to thank all you Trump voters for this wonderful thing that you have done. Hey, we're out of I'm serious. We are out of time, Jared, but gee, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We'll have to do it again.
Yep. Keep in touch, and we can set it up.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you, Lynn.
Bye. So there you have it. Be sure to Daily News Nuggets, his aggregate of news stories, sort of went away for a while. But it is back, and he's always got some wonderful things. I always think I've seen everything, and he always finds stuff that I have not. So the Daily News Nuggets on Blogspot, I think, is the place to go if you're a news junkie. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll be back tomorrow. Hope you will too. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.